Hello everybody, Mark here with your playlist video for April 2018. First things first, let me just apologise for the less than stellar audio quality on this video. I'm still moving into my new place and I haven't got my audio booth set up yet, so this is my streaming microphone. It's a bit echoey, it's not ideal, but I hope it's okay and I hope you can listen along. As for the video itself, I'm doing something slightly different on the playlist this month. I want to talk about two new indie games I've been playing that have a pretty similar idea, but very different executions. So one is called Minit, and it's a tiny black and white game. It's made by a small team of indie devs, but primarily JW, who is one half of Vlambeer. The other game is called Swords of Ditto, which is a much more lavish production. It looks like an Adventure Time episode come to life, and is made by One Bit Beyond, which is a new company from the former design director of Curve Digital. So both games pay a debt of gratitude to the Zelda series. These are top-down adventures where you wander about, swing your sword, solve puzzles and whatnot. Ditto is even more like Zelda than Minit, as you dive into puzzle-filled dungeons and gain an arsenal of different items like bows, bombs, and flaming torches. And then, both games are on a time limit. Minit gives you, surprise surprise, a minute before your character is killed and sent back to the start of the game. Ditto, on the other hand, gives you 4 in-game days, which are pretty short but longer than a minute, before it chucks you into the final boss fight. Die there, or at any point really, and the game restarts. So two pretty similar games, two Zelda-inspired titles with strict time limits and permadeath mechanics, and they're even published by the same people, Devolver Digital, and they came out within a few weeks of each other. Weird, right? But it's the differences between these two games that are important. For example, in Minit, you keep all your stuff when you die, but in Ditto, you'll lose some really key items. Minit's world is static. Every time you die, you'll come back to the exact same handcrafted space. Ditto, however, has a randomly generated world, so die or run out of time, and the entire world map is jumbled up. With this in mind, Minit is definitely more of a puzzle game. The world is essentially a big bunch of locks, like trees you can't get past, blocks you can't push, characters who need items, and as you explore and find new gear and new items, you'll be able to bypass these obstacles and get further into the game. It's almost like a simple point-and-click adventure, but the time limit makes it more interesting. You can't just potter about at your leisure, but must work quickly and efficiently to get stuff done. The real thrill of the game is keeping this ever-expanding world map in your head and figuring out the best use of your time for the next 60-second run. You can also unlock new respawn locations like hotels and camper vans, and your items, which like I say you keep after dying, can be used to create shortcuts through the world. This helps you out, but also adds more stuff to juggle in your head. Ditto is more of a traditional adventure game. There are enemies to kill in tricky combat situations, dungeons with puzzles that, well, they won't be showing up on boss keys anytime soon. They're not very taxing, I mean. You've got side quests, tiny caves to explore, and so on. It's a pretty big, sprawling, Zelda-like adventure. And so it feels like a pretty normal game, but then it's got these 3 immense pressure points laid on top. If you die, you start the game again. If you run out of time, you face the final boss, and in either situation, the world map becomes jumbled and all your hard work filling in the map and activating fast travel stations is kinda wasted. Because the world map resets, I don't think you get that same feeling of learning through repetition like you do in Minit, or becoming more efficient with each death. You kinda just play a game and then get kicked in the teeth every now and again. You know, things like time limits and permadeath are very tricky design choices. Games like Dead Rising and Majora's Mask and The Swindle and Persona have all had their fair share of criticism and have lost potential players by enforcing a timer on the player. I mean, I didn't play Majora's Mask for years because I found it too stressful as a young'un. It's now one of my all-time favourite Zelda games, but at the time, the threat of losing all my progress was just too much pressure to put on me. So when these sorts of things are used, they have to be used really carefully, and I think Minute does it well. This is a game that really knows what it's about, and it focuses squarely on that idea to its huge advantage. This is a game about playing in 60-second chunks and getting better each time, and everything in the game is focused on that idea and making it palatable and fun. And it's full of funny ideas that really kind of poke fun at the concept of the game. You've got characters who talk really slowly and marshy swamps that slow you down, these long boat trips, all these things that have you going, come on, I don't have time for this. It's deliberately trolling you in a really fun and charming way. Ditto just does not feel like that. It does not feel like a game with a focused idea. It almost feels like a bait and switch, because for a good half hour you might think that this is just a charming Zelda style game to work through at your leisure, and I quite fancied the idea of doing that. This is a cute game with, you know, some jokes in there, and it feels pretty good to move around and use your items. It even has some fun systemic stuff like fire propagation and enemies hurting each other. But then, suddenly, you're asked to start it all again, and with an entirely new world map to boot. It's almost like, come on guys, choose one or the other, time management, permadeath, or random generation. One or maybe two, not all three, come on, that's too much. And sure, all of this stuff lends Ditto a sense of peril and tension, as a time limit usually does, and the game does lean into the concept a bit, such as how the town folk will get more angry with you the more times you mess up, and force the world into chaos for another 100 years, but I don't think these contentious design choices are really, truly earned by the game. And that's an issue that's definitely echoed by the Steam reviews, which are very mixed on the various pressure points. This is a concept that I talk about a bunch on GMTK and on the playlist. This idea of really, truly focusing on the idea that makes your game special. Minute definitely does this, but Ditto seems to toss in ideas that have shown up in other titles and hope they'll have the same effect and impact in this game. And for my money, they don't really stick the landing. I like playing sort of Ditto. The game itself is great, but all of those pressure points just don't really make it as much fun. You know, Minute is easy to get sucked into as you constantly make little bits of progress and marvel at the unexpected scope of the world. It just seems to keep getting bigger and bigger, and you know, new ideas are constantly being thrown on. Whereas Ditto is easy to get frustrated by, and it gives you this really easy moment to leave the game every time you die and the world is reset. That's a huge amount of progress you've just lost and a huge amount of progress you've got to put in, and at that point it's pretty easy to just bail out of there and, you know, just give up on the game. So ironically, despite the fact that Minute's time limit is massively more strict than Ditto's, I mean, I think Ditto gives you about maybe 45 minutes to finish the game, and Minute gives you 60 seconds. It's the former game, it's Minute, that ends up feeling more freeing and accessible. Funny, eh? In the end, recommend Minute to anyone. I think it's really fun little game. Sort of Ditto, recommended, but with a whole bunch of caveats, and if any of this stuff makes you go, ugh, I can't really be bothered with that, then maybe give it a miss. Bit of a shame for such a wonderfully lovely looking game. But them's the breaks, that's the rub, that's how the cookie crumbles, that's how the biscuit melts in my tea. What am I talking about? Right, hope that was alright with you. I can really hear the echoiness in this room. I don't know what to do because I can't put up acoustic foam because it's a rented house, so you can't stick stuff on the walls. I mean, I've got this audio booth in this cupboard that I'm working on that will be full of acoustic foam and will sound absolute like a baller. But until then, we'll stick with this. So I hope that video was alright with you. I know it's a bit different than what I usually do with the playlist, but we'll go back to normal next month. I mean, I did look at Steam to see what new games are out. These were the 2 games that looked most interesting, and they just ended up being very similar, and it was interesting to talk about them in comparison to one another. But anyway, next month, 3, 4 games, little reviews, back to normal. Until then, thanks for your support, and I'll see you around on the internet. Whoa, video games. See ya.